I'm still with Tim Montgomerie, the founder of Conservative Home, and in a little while Tim and I will discuss the massively extraordinary radical reforms of the House of Lords. From now on, if you want to propose someone that you want to be a peer of the realm, you've got to explain why. Yeah, that'll show them, won't it? That'll show them. We'll talk about that. What the hell is that about? We'll talk about that in a minute. But let's revisit, Tim, if we can. You were talking about two-tier Keir's big problem is partly that nickname, but partly because that nickname fits so many areas of British life, and one, of course, is the police. That's the quintessential two-tier problem. Yesterday, I wonder what you made of it. I was rather impressed. Reform UK, we're talking about the Manchester Airport cop beating incident, happened on July the 23rd. A lot of people say, what are the police doing? What are the police doing? In fairness to Greater Manchester Police, they handed the file to the Crown Prosecution Service on August the 15th. So, in a sense, it's not fair to criticise the police. They've done their job. The CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, decides whether or not to charge. So that's August the 15th. So here we are on October the 8th, almost 2 months. No decision yet, and I think we all know why. We all know why. This is because they're worried, because the two brothers filmed raining punches down on the coppers are Muslims, and sensitivities tend to surround that part of our population. So that's what's going on there. There's no doubt about that. But Reform UK yesterday said that they would launch private actions against these two brothers in a bid to spur the Crown Prosecution Service into action. Do you think it will?
I don't know. And this is an issue that really does make my blood boil, actually, Kevin. We all saw those that footage, and what I think the problem is, people have clearly seen when there's absolute evidence of disgusting behaviour towards the police, nothing has been done. Now, there is already a large sense in the country that other incidents aren't properly policed, and so if people say, well, they don't do anything with when the evidence is seemingly incontrovertible. Certainly there hasn't been a public explanation of why there hasn't been a prosecution. And I think it will feed every suspicion, every cynic, every conspiracy theorist who thinks, actually, all the stuff we've thought about the police, that there is a two-tier system where some people are treated differently from others. There should be an absolute interest from those who care about law and order in this country for this case to proceed, to quash that. The very fact that it hasn't proceeded confirms, I'm afraid, will confirm in many people's minds the fears that they do have, that one set of the community gets one kind of policing and another community gets something very much different.
Well, it confirms in my mind. I mean, we've done a lot of work on this show, you know, contacting Manchester Police on a daily basis. 2 weeks ago, we revisited it on our own volition.
No, it's been brilliant journalism, actually.
Just saying, when is something going to happen? If you're not going to charge them, say so. If you are going to charge them, obviously say so. Obviously, there's also two coppers have been suspended, one of whom was filmed stamping that guy on the head. And at first, we all went, that looks a bit over the top, don't think you should do that. Then we saw the subsequent video where we saw these two guys, you know, pummeling these coppers, raining punches down, like madmen. And, you know, a poor female officer had to go to hospital, a broken nose, blood everywhere. All three coppers had required hospital treatment. But look at it, I mean, it's extraordinary.
It really is extraordinary.
And you know, clearly the lawyers of the two guys are saying, well, there's a reason for this, you know, their mother was upset and so on and so forth. Well, what I would...
When my mum's upset, I always go and punch police officers.
Find me a copper. No, but the way I see it, the punch it, I cannot think of anything, I don't care what the excuse is, I cannot think of anything that excuses private citizens of this country pummeling, serving police officers while they're on duty like that. I cannot think of anything that justifies it, and that's why I think emotions are running high about this. What on earth is the... Well, we know what the delays are, and you know, the Crown Prosecution Service should really sort itself out, because it's embarrassed itself, and I know that a lot of the coppers in Manchester are furious with it.
Well, let's name it, Kevin. Let's be absolutely clear. What it is that the authorities are worried about a reaction from elements within the Muslim community that could cause disorder in the street. And of course, we see it every other Saturday in London. The pro-Palestinian marches aren't being policed properly because the police don't have the resources to deal with what they fear would be a counter protest, a riot potentially, if they did crack down on these pro-Palestinian demonstrators. And it's not just this issue, is it? Why are our prisons full of drugs? It's because the prison authorities are worried that if they clamp down on drugs in prisons, they will have prison riots. Why are shoplifters allowed to empty shelves in shops? It's because the police do not have the resources to properly crack down on the gangs that are often behind this shoplifting. We are under-resourcing our police, our penal and our prison service because we haven't prioritised law and order as perhaps the most important function of the state.
The authorities in Manchester say it's a very complicated case. Well, I've had several coppers, former coppers on this show, who just say, he said, this is not a complicated case. No. This is not a complicated case, and quite why they can't work out that it's quite important that something has to happen here, and it has to happen soon, is beyond me. It's beyond me.
And I can understand why they've suspended the police officer who, you know, according to the footage, did stamp on the guy's head, and it does look like something very difficult to defend. But you also have to consider that police officer had a machine gun in his hand, and if he had lost control of that, and imagine those guys had got hold of one of the firearms, we could have been talking about a very much worse situation. What you do not do as an armed response officer is ever lose control of your weapon. And the police were, because of the brutality that was being rained upon them, they were in danger of losing control of that situation. So you can't defend the action, but there is an understanding of why, in extremis, he was trying to bring that situation under control.
Yeah, exactly right, exactly right. When we first saw the head stomping, everybody thought, well, that looks over the top. Then you saw the subsequent video, and you think, well, this is a frenzied attack by these people, and you can understand that maybe in, as you say, in these extreme circumstances, that copper felt he had to, fair means or foul, bring this guy under control. And we're just looking now at the press conference. This was now at least a month ago, if not more. Actually, way over. It must have been early August. This is the two brothers with the mother and the lawyer. And the lawyer, this was a month and a half ago, beginning of August, I do believe. He said, well, you know, my clients can't possibly get a fair trial now because everybody's seen this video and everybody's talking about it, so you can see what's going on there.
But that press conference, Kevin, shouldn't have been allowed really to take place. The delay from the prosecution means that the more you have this sort of, even this discussion we're having now, it makes it harder and harder for there to be a perception of a fair trial. The lawyers of these people will now cite discussions like our own as reasons why their guys won't get a fair trial. That's why justice and these processes need to be swift. And you almost could say the delay is being introduced or presided over as a way of putting this issue out of the courts.
Yeah, this is what, on August the 8th, you're quite right. I mean, we should not be able... in a sensible world, we should not be allowed to have this conversation.
Because there's already been charges.
And a couple of coppers have said to me, said, what I'd have done, they said, first day, you know, a charge is not written in stone. You can drop it later on. He said, I'd have charged them straight away to shut down public discussion. Yeah. Instead, anybody can talk about it. It is an absolute... chaos. It's a chaotic situation, and this is the independent Police Complaints Commission, this is the regional director, Catherine Bates, up in Manchester, said, "It is clear the situation at Manchester Airport was complex and escalated rapidly. The incident, which resulted in injuries to police officers and members of the public, has caused understandable concern, and we are working hard to piece together all of the relevant events on that day. It is clear the situation was complex."
What?
Is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it?
Is it?
It's not.
If I start kicking you in the head now in this studio, Kevin, is it complex or is it just me being a brutal beast?
Exactly right. It's not complex, and that's why. I mean, I keep saying that's why people are confused as to why there hasn't been any action. But we're not confused as to why there hasn't been any action.
We should take over the law and order system. I think you and I, Kevin, we could sort this out pretty quickly. I think.
Let's go back. Yeah, I think we should. I think we should assume total control. The country needs us. It's in such bad trouble. It needs us.
Dictators are us.
Yeah. But I remember talking of two-tier policing. And by the way, we saw some serious two-tier justice through the summer. Nobody's condoning what the rioters did in Southport and Middlesbrough and all around the country. However, the question still has to be asked, how come they were arrested, charged, put in jail within 5 days, while other accused criminals wait 2 years? I mean, that's two-tier. Now, at the time, we had two hilarious incidents. One was Sir Mark Rowley, the Commissioner of the Police, coming out of a Cobra meeting, and somebody, I think it was from Sky News, saying, "Excuse me, Sir Mark, what do you have to say about two-tier policing?" He grabbed hold of the mic.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
So I think he was angry. And the other, of course, was the Prime Minister, again. When asked about he just looked at the nation, looked us in the eye and said, "It's not an issue."
No.
It is an issue.
Of course it's an issue. And look, you remember, was it Rotherham where the mob tried to burn the asylum seekers in the Holiday Inn?
Rotherham.
It was a Holiday Inn, wasn't it?
It was Rotherham, yeah.
It was one of the most despicable things I can remember
horrible.
being... You know, those images were filmed in Britain and transported and shown around the world. It was shameful to Britain, and it was absolutely right that those people who were guilty of that were rounded up quickly and prosecuted. Absolutely, I don't think either of us would dissent from that.
Yeah.
But why haven't those people in Manchester received the same treatment? And there'll be lots of people who will be listening to our conversation who will have seen the different treatment and will be saying, one reason is because some of the people involved in the riots were white, and the others were Asian. Some were of a Christian culture, some were of Muslim culture. Now, I would love the authorities in our country to come forward and tell me why people who have those suspicions are wrong. Yeah. At the moment, I do not know what to tell people with those suspicions, because I like to think we're colour-blind and culture-blind in our policing, but the evidence
we're not.
of our eyes suggests something different. And this is what we're talking about now, Kevin. It's toxic stuff.
I know.
This is really dangerous stuff. And we've been a really successful melting pot as a country for many years, where people of different skin colours and cultures can live alongside, and most of the time we do. But that will not always be the case if there is this growing perception, perhaps reality, of different cultures, people of different skin colours being treated differently. Government need to get on top of this incredibly quickly.
They really, really do. And as I say, it doesn't help having a Prime Minister. No, it's not an issue. It really is, Keir. And do you remember the Birmingham riot in the middle of all the other white working class riots, largely white working class? There was a Muslim riot in Birmingham which flared up because the Muslim community were warned there might be a huge white working class riot against them. So they amassed and had their own riot during which a guy was stabbed. People were locked in pubs, people were terrified, and the police were nowhere to be seen. And the following day, when asked, how come is it that millions of you go out in Southport and Middlesbrough and arrest anyone you can see all over them like a ton of bricks, and yet in Birmingham you were nowhere to be seen? I mean, literally, you can see from the pictures, there's no coppers, no police cars, anything. They're just getting on with rioting, running up and down the streets. And this senior officer I can't remember his name, but he said it was something along these lines. Well, after you have to police every situation in a different way according to the circumstances. And then he said, and after meetings with community leaders, our partners and stakeholders, we decided to maintain a very low presence.
Well, you know what, Kevin? It was probably complex as well.
It was complex, exactly. But any time an official starts saying words like working with our partners and stakeholders, switch the telly off. It's just they're talking utter jargon. What is a stakeholder when they say we've been working with our stakeholders? What does that even mean? But anyway, the Birmingham riot was policed in a dramatically different way to the rest of the riots that were happening at that time, and the difference between those riots and the one in Birmingham was staged by Muslims. There you got it, two-tier policing.
And you're right to focus on the jargon that these people use, but it's not just because it portrays that they have other values. What is also, they're hiding behind this, because what we need in the situations that we've just been describing is an old-fashioned copper to come on the television and use the language that we all use. Perhaps there is an explanation of why certain situations are policed differently, but I get the impression that they use this sort of language as a way of hiding the fact that they have got no way of explaining why these things are different. So the language isn't just a hint of their true priorities, it's a way of putting like a fog around all these issues, and they hope that we get bored because we don't understand what they're talking about.
Yeah, well, it's like Peter Blexley always says, former Met Police detective, favourite of this station, a regular guest, I'm sure you all know. He goes, the trouble with most senior officers is they're far more interested in dancing the Macarena than catching the bad guys. Which pretty much sums it up. Listen, talking of bad guys, when we come back, let's talk about the House of Lords. I'm still with Tim Montgomerie. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan. This is The Political Asylum. Stay tuned.